Hello and welcome. We're at Holistic Investments, and I'm your host, Konstantin Kogan. And we're delighted to have amazing guest today, Jay Hunter Anson, who's a senior cybersecurity analyst and consultant, member board of directors of Ministry of Finance, Republic of Palau. He's also consulting at Lennar, which is a multi-billion-dollar company. He's also consultant in Cyber Florida and the Center of Cybersecurity. He's a really, really interesting person. He has like probably 15 different experiences in cybersecurity. I'm really excited to learn from you, Jay. Welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, and traditionally, traditionally, we're excited to have you. We're going to throw a legal disclaimer so that we can talk about a lot of things. This content is for informational purposes only. You should not construe any such information or other material as legal, tax, investment, financial, or any other advice. So now let's talk business. Jay, you have like really, really impressive resume. Like, and if you just Google Jay's name, you will see that he was working for one of the top government like entities, one of the top companies, like mostly like in cybersecurity or general information security, cryptography. So first of all, I want to ask you about like more a personal question, right? What led you to be excited about cybersecurity?
Well, and I'll be honest, I wasn't excited when I first started. Of course, my first experience with cybersecurity was even before it was called cybersecurity or cyber. It was just information assurance back in 2008, 2009 with the Stuxnet debacle, and that malware got into the DoD networks. And so I was a company commander in the U.S. Army Signal Corps in Iraq at the time. And Iraq was kind of drawing down. It was after the surge years of 2007 to 2008. And so they shrunk from, I think they had over 150,000 troops in Iraq, and they shrunk that down. By the time I got there, we were down to 70,000. But what those people, as they left all their computers in place, and a lot of the equipment, we had no idea where it was. So there was a lot of just following Cat5 cable and looking in empty offices and empty buildings and finding either switches or laptops and tracing them so that we could secure that equipment and either wipe it or reconfigure it to get rid of the Stuxnet virus. And it was a huge pain in the butt. I remember because it's this went through the summer. It's 130, 140 degrees, and you're walking around in all your stuff looking for computers that people left behind. So that was my first experience with poor asset management, poor network mapping. Thankfully, we've come a long way from there. But coming out of that, that's where U.S. Cyber Command was kind of the catalyst for forming that organization.
What year?
This was 2008, 2009.
Mm-hmm.
So I think U.S. Cyber Command, they were formed in 2009, 2010. And so that's where like cyber became like on everyone's tongue whenever you talked about InfoSec.
2010, May 21, 2010.
2010 was official, yeah. So that was it was interesting times, and at that point it was more just name only. There was something no one really knew what it was going to entail. The information assurance experts at the time, they were always kind of pushed to the side. They weren't really whenever we'd have our daily update briefings, operations briefings, they would have a little slice of when they'd come and tell us they pushed patches, and everyone would nod and like, oh, that's nice. Like, who are they? Like, what do they do? But then, now it's more as we realize the importance of it, and we saw the impacts and effects that successful cyber attacks can have, it became more important. So my first real dedicated cybersecurity job was when I was posted here in Miami, Florida, with U.S. Southern Command, and I was kind of an excess person. The position I was assigned to had gone away while I was in transit, so they didn't know where else to put me. And at the same time, they were implementing NIST risk management framework, which was kind of taking the, I think they're up to 1,250 different controls right now across 20 different families, but taking that and incorporating it into U.S. Southern Command. And so, of course, nobody wanted to do it, and I didn't know any better, and I was excess, so I couldn't complain. I really wanted to stay in Miami. So they gave me that job as I was the deputy cybersecurity division chief for U.S. Southern Command, and I eventually became the chief. So we had 20,000 different endpoints all over South America, Latin America, the Caribbean, and then in the headquarters itself in Miami. So that was pretty challenging, but we got through it and learned a lot. And I think it gave me a good foundation because I started with on the governance, risk, and compliance side of it. So I had a really good foundation. I already had the operational background, and I understood, the ones and zeros. But that was pretty good, and it served me well post military as I ventured out into the civilian world and dealing with the different challenges.
So if we can pause here for a second, I think it's fascinating, this story. Like, first of all, like, you're just like casually telling that, oh, by the way, I was in Iraq, like, and not everyone was at war, not everyone was in Iraq. And this is like, I'm sure it's a very uh complicated experience. I wouldn't say traumatizing, because it's like, I don't want to be cliche about this, but I'm sure there's a lot of things that you probably were exposed that were not easy. And then you're coming back, you're still choosing to be like, this on a high level executive for you working for the government, because technically as I understood it, it's still part of like this entire entity. The Cyber Command was part of the Ministry of Defense, right? So U.S. Department of Defense.
Yes,
And it's a quite, like, we're now in 2024, so it's a quite young organization. So we're talking about less than 14 years, right?
that's
And
correct.
therefore, my question to you, like, as the young entity, but like, like, and you're becoming this high profile, like, rank, like, with a lot of responsibility. What are the probably 3 or 4 things that you think
Oh,
you've learned?
the three things I've learned. Oh, definitely with cybersecurity and anything that has to do with technology, you have to stay current. The the threat landscape is constantly changing. I mean, just in the last 6 months, we've seen like the emergence of AI, and then cloud security, and then like the policies that have to catch up to that, because policies. And then then the second thing would be the importance of policy, because policy means resources. If an organization says something is the policy, they have to be prepared to commit resources to ensure we can enforce that policy.
Mhm.
A lot of times, and the DoD was really bad at this, was the great idea fairy would come and, oh, we need to put this, that, or the other solution in place, and then you're like, well, how are you going to protect it? And so there was a lot of these initiatives while I was in the military that would pop up, and then they would go nowhere after about a year. Because there would be a high ranking official or executive who would champion it, and everyone would be like, yes, we're going to do that because you're a general or you're a colonel or whatever. But then a year later, the guy's leaving, so everyone's like, all right, we don't have to make him happy anymore. We'll go ahead and just let it die on the vine. But you've already invested a lot of um, time and resources into that. So at the risk of admitting like we did waste a lot of taxpayer dollars in that sense. You can't do that in a corporation where return on investment is the reason for existence. So you have to be very judicious with your projects and where you want to spend resources on, because it's not I came up with this project, it went nowhere. Okay, I'm just going to go and get reassigned to another place, and leave that behind me. No, you lose your job, you lose your reputation. The next company that you apply to, they're going to talk to your last company and say, hey, why did you fire this guy or let him go? And they're going to tell, oh, she wasted $1-2 million doing some useless project. Don't let them do that to you. And then they'll find someone else to take the position.
For sure. And by the way, like we hear a lot, and obviously it's not like forwarded to you, but we hear a lot nowadays that things come out and questions about potentially like with a desire of like taxpayers auditing Pentagon, like with like multi-trillion-dollar like budget, like people start asking questions. Well, again, of course we value security. Of course we value the fact that we want to make sure that we're on top of things and we're updated, as you mentioned. But at the same time, we want some accountability, because like, how can you ensure that some high-ranking like general or whatever that may be, right? Like is not doing something like wrong, right? So there's both visions, right? And which we should probably take into account. But like in your experience, right? I'm just what by the way, your highest rank? I'm just curious. Was this like a colonel, or what was your highest rank?
I was only a lieutenant colonel.
Lieutenant
I mean, well, in U.S. Southern Command, it's a combatant command. So, most of the action officers are either majors or lieutenant colonels. So you can swing a dead cat and hit 20 of us in a room. But, there were only a few of us that worked in like communications and cybersecurity. So it was really hard to find a voice, right? When you're rolling out something as complicated as NIST RMF, where
by the way, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you casually it's like throw like NIST. Can you maybe in layman terms explain to the audience what is it?
So
what is NIST?
yeah, no problems. I'm sorry. It's a standards organization. It stands for National Institute of Standards and Technology. It's similar to ISO, which the international community is probably more familiar with. And they put out several different levels of a cybersecurity framework. So most organizations use the NIST cybersecurity framework. They just released 2.0 last month, which has a governance function now. And so it prescribes different functional areas, and then within those functional areas, you have to implement controls like multi-factor authentication, password complexity and length, and then even down to what types of technology you're going to use to lock down networks and encrypt the data that's going across the networks, things of that nature. So, like I said, NIST RMF was the risk management framework under NIST has over 1,200 controls that you have to implement into the network. And so it's very complicated, but the data owner has to tell you how much risk or how valuable their data is. And everyone will tell you, oh, my data is high risk, high value. We need to put all of the controls in place to protect it, even if you really didn't. So like the command librarian that is not collecting or storing any kind of really sensitive or classified data feels that their data is the same as the intelligence directorate that's collecting and keeping top secret classified information. So yeah, no, I mean, it was just in that sense, it was pretty tough. You have to be a people person to some extent. You have to be able to explain in non-techie terms, so that, and you got to find those things that the bill payers and the executives, they understand, like, oh, this is important, and we have to do it.
Yeah. And this is impressive. You worked there for 4 years, like, again, as a chief information security officer, and you managed multi-million-dollar budget. Like, I'm sure you had a huge team, like, behind you, and like, that was a lot of responsibility. And then I want to switch to the next, like, your choice in career, which to me is also like pretty impressive. You work for National Security Agency, NSA, which is like we were joking before the show. We can talk about it a little bit. Like, to me, NSA has like one of the biggest pool of like best cryptographers in the world. And notably, I want to ask you this tricky question, because I know you were a cryptographic support engineer, so you understand this topic, right? And naturally understand crypto and blockchain as a
Yes.
technology. So you know that in our industry, there is a strong theory among some of the pundits that because we don't know who is Satoshi, right? And technically, if you look at the timing and the capability of like the talent who were even able to create something like that, because it's a state of art, like like architecture. Let's be honest, like whoever is going to come out, whether it's one person or 10 people, like they should get a Nobel Prize immediately, or whatever the equivalent is, right?
Yeah.
So my question to you, do you think that there is like theoretically a possibility that NSA could have created a Bitcoin?
So of course, I mean, there's many different compartments to the NSA, and different different things that the NSA does. I worked in the communications security vault of U.S. Southern Command, so mostly dealing with cryptography that was shared or used by our partner nations to do counter drug trafficking and things of that nature, so that we could talk securely with them on a kind of a regional scale, mostly over tactical satellite. And then within that, there was some collaboration with the other
Hmm.
departments within NSA. And I would certainly agree with the notion that the level of complexity that was involved with developing Bitcoin and then subsequent blockchain technology could very well have been developed within the NSA, or by scientists or contractors that had done work with the NSA and then saw the potential and then decided to develop this. But then, the secrecy behind the identity of the founders is something very NSA-like, where they're able to compartmentalize and uh, uh, hide those identities, and how the work was done, and then came together to develop this product and then communicate it to the world, starting very, very small, but then it grew rapidly as people saw the potential of it. So yeah, no, I wouldn't discount that the NSA had something to do with developing the technology.
I actually really appreciate your honest answer, because I know it's probably not easy for you, because you've been attached to this, like, organization. So but to me it would be like a lot of like maybe not directly, maybe them as organization, maybe some ex-employees, that's also a possibility, right? But like if you compare, like, the, as you mentioned, the complexity of architecture, like, and also the incentive, because let's be logical here, like, so first of all, there's interest in cryptography, there's interest in, like, controlling and tracing all the digital transactions. because then if you actually have the ability to trace all the illicit transactions, that gives you a lot of power, right? And we're not talking about like locally, we're talking about globally, right?
Yes. Yep.
And that's a smart decision to stay anonymous, obviously, because it creates an illusion that, oh, by the way, like, people can like do it. But we know nowadays that actually Bitcoin is not really amazing tool because the moment you cash out into fiat, like that's all. Like the government knows everything about you. It's actually much easier to track everything easier than the bank.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, it's just an interesting that like you also don't discount this. I really appreciate it. And then if we jump to to what you've been working there, like like what was your core focus? I mean, just curious because first of all, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know it's not easy to get to NSA. There's a lot of like levels of like interviews, like and tests, right? And another friend of mine who told me he worked there for some few years, he said like it's only the top engineers can get there.
Yeah, well, so I retired in June of 2019, and I kind of took a sabbatical. I opened a consulting business, and so I was doing some consulting, but I had a lot of flexibility. So I traveled. I went to Spain. I went back to Palau. I was doing, I was trying to relax, and transition my mind from being in the military to being, out and free. And then so they had a vacancy, someone who was working in the NSA vault in U.S. Southern Command left, and they asked, hey, what are you doing? Are you interested? Uh, it doesn't pay much or whatever, but I was looking for kind of a stopgap. I wasn't ready to go back and be a manager with like all that responsibility. So, well, the way they explained the job was appealing because I would be responsible for my work, and that was it. So I said, sure, I'll go ahead and yeah, I'll do it. I put in my application, went through several interviews, and then worked in the vault. And the vault is so U.S. Southern Command campus. I mean, it's very, very secure. You have to have a badge to get inside. You have to then inside the building, the buildings themselves, you have to have badges to get inside those buildings. And then our vault was only there was 5 of us that worked in there, and only the 5 of us were allowed inside
Wow.
that vault. And I mean, it sounds impressive, but it can actually be pretty boring because you don't really talk to anyone except the us in there. We had a cable TV, so we'd watch that. But I mean, other than that, it was a lot of pushing paperwork and getting authorization for this, that, and the other from the NSA headquarters and the Joint Staff. But it was
And does it require like what level of clearance does that require?
no, you have to have a top secret, and then it's SCI, which is compartmentalized to that specific mission set that I was doing there.
And it creates some limitations for you as an individual.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, at the time, yeah, to maintain the clearance, you have to, of course, I mean, you can't have any financial problems. You can't have any. There's a pretty extensive
List.
application that you have to fill out when you're applying for your clearance, and then it stays there. And then when you apply to the job, especially with positions supporting the NSA, they do like more background checks with you because you're handling a lot of sensitive information and data. I mean, the core cryptography that goes into systems to encrypt transmissions. That's like what you're handling on a daily basis. And if that gets out into the world, there's second and third order effects. If I dealt with several what they're called communication security compromises throughout my time with the military, And I think we had one while I was working for NSA. And so you have to realize that globally, everybody has to change to the next key. So you have to issue it out. You have to uh, transition early, and then you have to destroy all the old key and then make sure everything's working. So it's no small feat when you
Wow.
do
And
that.
it's not like in a movie that you also have like, take a pill with cyanide and then like,
Oh
cyan.
no, they replaced my cyanide tooth after I stopped working. I only worked there for a year. Like I said, it was kind of I mean the work was super interesting, but it was very isolating, So
Mm,
it was good after that. I transitioned into some other defense contract jobs, more and they were more enjoyable. I'd say a lot of organizations within the Department of Defense were coming up on like their 3-year term to renew their authorization to operate packets on the network. So, I told you in 2016 they started with the NIST RMF until 2000 and I think everyone had until 2018 to be 100% compliant. And then once you were compliant, you had 3 years until you had to renew. So everyone was coming into that 3-year window. Of course, no one's checking, so no one had done anything for 3 years to maintain their compliance status. And so that was kind of my the work I did with the Department of the Army headquarters in the Pentagon was to get their contractors back up to speed and get them, get a plan in place so that they could remain compliant and stay on the network and continue operating.
interesting. And then basically that's when you decided to work there for almost a year. And then you
Yes.
switched to Pentagon and also worked a year in Pentagon, right? Just to add like to the full list. Why not? Like, right? NSA, Pentagon, like, and then like White House maybe, right? So
No, never made it to the White House.
yes, yet.
But went from uh, that Pentagon job to so the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. That was my next position. That one was okay. It was a lot of long hours because I was the network operations. So they combined their NOC and their SOC into a network operations and security center. So I had around I think 80 some cybersecurity engineers that worked for me, but they were all over the country. And
Wow.
so U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, they monitor a lot of the critical infrastructure, mostly dams, canals, bridges, all of that stuff.
Mhm.
So when something big stops working, and if it's cyber related, then my department would get a call, and then we'd try to find the engineer to go and do troubleshooting, along with all the different projects for life cycle upgrades, things of that nature. So it
If
was
I may ask you, it's more of a maybe it was a little bit more like apocalyptic question, and but like I'm coming originally from Ukraine, like, and our country experienced it like firsthand, right? So, for example, when
yes.
Russia attacked, they obviously targeted a lot of infrastructure, right? Like power plants, like a lot of like other like essential like dams, everything
Mhm.
like related to basically like create a complete dissolution of like and stop functioning like their arteries of like of the cities, big cities, right? And obviously that destabilizes the army and the civil population, etc., right? So in Ukraine, obviously we didn't have like such an equipment to fight back, right? It's obviously more challenging. Like again, in a hypothetical scenario, right? If somebody like would attack United States infrastructure, what happens like with with you, with the people like you're like as if you would to lead those 80 experts, like how do they react immediately?
I mean, it depends on what's going on, right? So there were, so like I was in that job. It was it before or after the colonial? I don't know. They all blend together. But during when the Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack happened, that impacted fuel distribution across the entire East Coast, and had detrimental effects on um, logistics for moving fuel, logistics for tracking fuel, and that had the effect of prices going up. And but it could have been a lot worse. If that was kind of a one-off. I think, like, even like looking at it, the ransomware attackers apologized. I think they didn't mean to do it. Once they saw the effects of it, kind of like the ones that attack, there's like this agreement among them that they're not going to attack hospitals, because then you're like putting kids and sick people out, and it's just a bad look for them if your motivation is just money. So when they saw the scale of what happened, but I mean, it's very possible. But the Colonial Pipeline opened up a lot of people's eyes to, like, oh, this isn't just about attacking a wealthy bank and asking them for $1 million out of their billions of dollars. This can affect the reputation of governments to be able to provide security and provide services to the people, to their constituents. So that got a lot of attention at the U.S. government level, at the national level. So that led to the cybersecurity strategy, and then we just had this AI strategy come out. Here in the state of Florida, I consult with Cyber Florida, and what their mission is educating and providing resources for organizations that either are part of one of the 16 critical infrastructure sectors, or they're vendors or organizations that support the critical infrastructure sectors, with the idea that getting that strong foundation of GRC and user awareness training in place, so that we're not just throwing a bunch of resources at technology and the next shiny thing that a vendor says is going to protect you. You're able to go through the steps of third-party risk management, vendor assessments, to make sure that you're getting what you need and you're using resources wisely. A lot of the work I do is with state and local governments who have small budgets, small resources, and they want to be more efficient in that regard. So that if a cyber attack, such as the ones you described in the Ukraine, I'm very familiar with the effects that occurred in the cyberspace domain there, so that doesn't have as big of an impact here. It's all about mitigating the risk, but it's also mitigating the impact if it does happen. So yeah, that's kind of, then caveating that's what I do. So I'm the director for the digital residency office in Palau, but I also serve as kind of the CISO for the Ministry of Finance. And we just went through a ransomware attack, but we had a good plan in place to mitigate the effects of that. We knew it was coming because they tried it before. And so a lot of that analysis that we've been doing the last year is also looking at critical infrastructure and what's vulnerable, what would be likely targets from state actors or hacktivists, or ransomware as a service providers. All of those, yeah.
It's the first time I hear this type of term, hacktivist.
Activists. I mean, there's people that just don't like, they have, they disagree with a philosophy or a stance on something. Palau, for example, recognizes Taiwan as a country. A lot of other state actors in the region probably aren't crazy about that notion. We're also very we're advocates for climate change. We believe that the global warming and all the stuff that a lot of other people don't think is real. And then there's a lot of people who are they're all for like deep sea mining and things of that nature, but Palau is against that. And then shark, you name it, shark finning. We have a national marine sanctuary in Palau. It's 80% of the economic zone is protected, and so it's patrolled, and you're not allowed to fish there. So that impacts the economies of a lot of these other countries that do long line fishing for multi-billion-dollar seafood industry.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all about those second and third order effects. Looking beyond the technology, the technological impact. What are they trying to make happen with their different attacks?
And it's actually beautiful that we transition right now to the topic of Palau, because I'll be honest with you, I knew that, roughly where is it geographically, there was somewhere in Oceania, right? Like I've never been there. So obviously it took me time to prepare for the interview and to learn a little bit more about it. And I was impressed. Like, first of all, as I told you, like my first excitement and I was surprised was that, Palau's national currency is US dollar, which I didn't know before, right? So that was an interesting surprise for me. And then, like, I understand it's and it's an archipelago, like, which with over 500 different islands. So I'm sure the nature is beautiful, and you can get
Oh, yeah.
there from like you can only get there from, like, let's say, by, I don't know, like a water scooter or a boat, right? So or
Yes. Water
like.
taxis. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly, or
Exactly.
water taxi. So by itself, like, it's such a different, like, when I live in New York, so that's very, very different reality, right? So, and you were, so you, like, if I'm asking you, you were born there?
Yes.
Got it. So you were born there, and how old were you when you immigrated to United
Oh,
States?
I left. I think the first time I was maybe 2 or 3 years old, and then I went back, and then I left again when I was 17, and I finished high
Hmm.
school in the U.S. and then went into the military. Then I was just kind of back and forth to visit mostly until I retired, and then I have a house there now, and so I
Nice.
split my time between Palau and the U.S. depending on what work's going on. And so I consider myself a Palau digital nomad because Palau is my home. I'm based there, but I work and live wherever I want.
And
Wherever it's,
do you speak Palauan?
I do. Don't ask me to say anything.
Okay, what?
No, it's fine. No, I was just kidding. Everyone's like, "Well, say something." Like, why?
No, but also it was, that what is interesting that I didn't know that you guys have, like, Palaun and English are few for, like, they're like official languages, but also recognized,
Yes,
like, Japanese is another recognized language, right? So,
yes, and Tagalog,
Tagalog,
huge
so
Filipino community there. Uh,
Sonsoralese, right? Also.
so that's very interesting. They have a language that is closer to the other Micronesian islands like Truk
Mm.
and Saipan. Um, yeah, they're what 160 kilometers southwest of the other islands of Palau. You can only reach them by boat. They only have satellite communication. I think there's maybe 30 people that live there now, between 25 and 30 people. It used to be a much bigger, much larger community, maybe
Mm.
400 or 500, and it's dwindled over time. But and I mean, I've never been there. I want to go there so bad, but it's at least a 3 week commitment because it takes a few days to get there by boat, and then to make it worthwhile,
Oh,
uh,
wow.
want to stay there a little bit longer. But supposedly the beaches are pristine. There's not a lot of human contact. So,
I'm sure.
taking Palau and the way Palau is with its like the pristine beauty of the oceans there to something like even more remote. I need to go at least once. before I die. I really want to see the Southwest Islands.
I mean, it's fascinating, and it's also interesting that like the territory is very small. It's 466 square kilometers, like which is like what, about 180 square miles, and we're talking about like this is one of the smallest islands in the world. Yet it's like pristine, as you mentioned, beautiful, and so. But I want to like first of all, like it's exciting to talk about it because I dream to go there already when I saw all the pictures. But I also want to focus on the topic that we started, the conversation. Ironically, we talked about a lot of things about cybersecurity, about Palau, but like the focus is on basically the new program that it was established recently about digital residency, right? So you
Yeah,
can pay now $248 and you can become a digital resident of Palau, which in many senses is impressive, like, for and very valuable for people who have challenges of passing the KYC, let's say when they want to register an a crypto exchange or any other like service that requires a KYC. Um,
yes.
and you became, like a very important member of this family. You become a member of board of directors, right? Minister of Finance, Republic of Palau. So tell us a little bit how that happened and why do you think it's very like it's interesting to the world?
Yeah, it's so I'd been part of my the consulting I did was I did some consulting with different on different blockchain projects with different companies like these startups, and most of it was they needed someone who understood cryptography. So my background, working in the military with cryptography with the NSA, uh, helped me. You kind of got me in the pool with these guys to talk about different things. So it wasn't that hard to understand blockchain and the benefits of blockchain and Web3. And so based on that knowledge, I was contacted by the Minister of Finance, who offered me the job as the director. I wasn't too crazy about it at first because it sounded very complicated. It wasn't, no one else was doing it. I'm typically I don't like to go first because that there's all kinds of challenges there. But Paul is matriarchal. And my sister is the national security coordinator for Palau, who recommended me for the job. So she pretty much told me I was going to do it, and that was the end of that. So I joined the board of directors. I got involved with the program. Then I started to realize, like, no, this is something with a huge potential, because first talking to, so we have a service provider, Cryptic Labs,
Mhm.
working with their CEO and their COO, William Wang and Albert Brown, started to realize, the demand for that there was a demand for this. They were trying to fill a demand, and they needed a sovereign, legitimate government that could partner with them or to do this. And so that was where Palau passed the Digital Residency Act, which provided legitimacy to the program. It's government backed. It's not going anywhere. It's not a private endeavor with venture capitalists that So there's no danger of pump and dump, and then oh, we got your $248. Now the program's going away. No, it's the government, and so Palau is a member of the United Nations. We're a member of a lot of different international organizations. We use the U.S. dollar, so there's a lot of the anti-money laundering, counter financing of terrorism. All of those rules and regulations apply so that we can continue using the U.S. dollar. We don't have our own central bank. And so there's, with that, of course, comes a lot of interest from the regulatory
Yeah.
bodies. So we've had IMF, World Bank, the U.S. Treasury Department, the IRS, they've come in and they've offered or they've conducted like training so that we can do blockchain analysis in the event that something a bad actor works against us, against our program. They've also provided us a lot of pointers on compliance and ensuring that we're keeping the data that we collect and store for the digital resident safe. There's a lot of responsibility involved there. And then, just everything we do has to be reviewed by all the different regulatory agencies within the Palau government. So the first thing we did was we did regulations for cybersecurity, how we protect the data of the digital residents, and the steps that are involved there. We're working on mailing address right now, mailing service. So there's two addresses. You can get a physical mailing address that's in the works. We keep saying it's really close. Because it always comes down to like the one or two people that have to say yes, right? And then, those one or
Just to
two.
clarify, the mailing address will be in Palau.
Yes. So Palau has, we have a U.S. Postal Service. It's Palau Postal Service, but it's U.S. zip coded. We follow all of the regulations and certifications for the U.S. Postal Service. And so with the mailing address, we'll also have a forwarding service so that you can forward mail through the post office there to your residence. So if you weren't able to order something from like Amazon or whatever website, you can do that and then have it forwarded to your actual home address wherever you're at in the world. Then the other thing we're working on is a digital phone number. So the digital phone number, it acts as a utility where you'll have a 680 country code. You'll receive a bill, and you'll have that option as well. And then the thing we just beta tested, it should be rolled out soon, is the digital signature service. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff we're working through the roadmap, working slowly, but we're moving at the speed of government. So when we have the backing of a sovereign government, the sovereignty is built into the program, but with that comes all the things, the bureaucracy of working with a government organization, not as fast as and agile, of course, as private organizations can be, but we're also being very safe and meticulous with
Of
how
course, as you should be, because it's still a big for it to become, like I would say exemplar, like in a good for other countries, you should obviously keep it only like very, very serious, because it's still residency, right? It's not easy.
Yeah.
Like a lot of countries charge $200,000 for investment. You need to spend certain amount of time in the country, etc. So there are a lot of limitations. I think that one of the key things what I guide, like, first of all, thank you, William, like you want to mention him, like, Cryptic Labs, so who connected us. And then, but ironically, that's ironic because I actually heard about this program way before from Tim Draper. And I remember
our first resident. Yeah,
exactly. I remember that he was your first resident. The president of Palau actually was like doing live inauguration of it.
Yeah.
And I watched it. I'm like, okay, I should do it. And then I forgot about it. I don't know why. I was traveling, completely forgot about it. So then basically William reminded me. I'm like, oh my God, yeah, I have to continue. So I looked it up, like, and I realized that Vitalik Buterin is a resident, that Tim Draper, many high profile people are already resident, and they are doing it not because like, I think it's important to also demystify certain things. Like one of your interviews, like people start bashing, asking you, oh, well, so you do this to avoid whatever taxes are doing, like, and I remember your quote that you said, like, we're not encouraging people to falsify their physical residence or circumvent laws, right? You explained that this is just an additional tool to kind of ease like your life if you want to do that, right? It's not like nobody's like encouraging you to do that, right? And it's
Right.
actually a very useful tool, right? You can do KYC for banks, for exchanges, for whatever you can do it. And can you explain a little bit about like plus 180 days stay per entry, right? And about zero
Oh,
tax
yeah.
for outside Palau income? I think that those are pretty cool perks.
Yeah, so we were able to change the immigration regulation or amend it to allow digital residents. They can stay actually up to, I think it's 270 days total. So Palau is visa on arrival. So when you arrive in Palau, you don't have to do any kind of coordination beforehand. You arrive as long as you're not from, I think it's North Korea and Iran, you can stay up to 30 days in Palau. If you're from European Union, I believe it's 90 days. It just depends. But if you're a digital resident, and then, okay, so then everyone can extend for another 30 days after that initial 30, and then they can extend for another 30 days. So really 90 days visa
Okay.
on arrival. And then beyond that, for digital residents, you can stay 180 days.
On
Beyond
top
that,
of that, right?
on top of the 90 days minimum that everyone is able.
270 in
So
total.
270 total. So while you're there, there's if you stay in a hotel, a lot of the hotels will give you the local rate for hotels, so you're not paying the tourist rate. You can get an Airbnb, you can rent an apartment. There's then from that you have to get internet. So you can get internet bill, you can get um, telephone bill. So either you have your utility bill that everyone's always asking about, and then from there you don't have to pay any. If you keep your job outside, you don't pay any
Hmm.
taxes to plow on that job. So it's great in that sense. I get paid from the Ministry of Finance for the work I do with them, but I also get paid from the work I do in the U.S. I don't pay taxes on any of my work I do in the U.S. to Palau. I only pay taxes on my Palau income, and vice versa. So, in that sense, it's beneficial. Sometimes I would rather pay the Palau tax rate though, but it is what it is.
Well, that's because you're in US. I mean, but for other people, it'll be kind of vice versa, right? So,
yes,
yeah. But so okay, so that's amazing. So I mean, obviously, there's a lot of utilities. We're talking about like on-chain legal ID, digital
yes,
residency, geography agnostic governance, right? So if we talk a little bit, like really briefly about on-chain legal ID, right? So not only can you pass easily, like the background checks, like you can do DAO governance, right? Even purchase insurance plans, like on your documentation, there's a lot of other like cool perks, age verification, service requiring KYC, legal
yes.
identification. What I'm curious to know, like about DAO governance, right? So what does it mean in the context of of actually voting? Where do you vote?
So I mean, that's something that is probably it's very future focused because
Okay.
it depends on the country. If they're going to accept that type of solution design into their voting system and their election system. I mean, Palau is probably so we started looking at it at the possibility of establishing a digital voting system for Palau, but we kind of just ran out of time.
Hmm.
This is an election year, and so we didn't want to complicate things any further. But there's huge potential in it because using the blockchain, of course, is irrefutable. The records are decentralized. It's transparent, so you can't see who someone's voting for, but you can verify that they voted.
Yes.
So that's the beauty of it. Palau uses paper ballots still with the lock boxes and stuff like that, and it's for me. It's very vulnerable to corruption, loss of ballots, damage to the ballots,
Of course.
or I lost the key. You're delayed. You can't. Yeah, a lot of things that automating that process securely would really solve. It's a great use case for it, and if we could proof it there, other governments would probably pick up on it. The way we did proof of concept for Ripple's CBD central bank centralized currency, digital currency. Like we like the solution design we proved in Palau can be used anywhere in the world, and so that's kind of the thought process behind wanting to test and proof these ancillary services through the digital residency program in Palau.
Yeah, I have a hard feelings about CBDC. I'll be completely transparent with you. I don't think it's a great idea. It will limit our privacy, it will limit our freedom, and
Right.
therefore, as much as I understand why the government wants to do that, I think that's gonna create a lot of
Well,
like.
in Palau's context, we don't have a centralized bank,
Hmm.
but as we move to more e-government services, we need a national payment system
I see.
to process, your tax payments, your driver's license renewal, and so it was more focused on using blockchain technology as the foundation for the payment platform. It's kind of similar to what PayPal is doing now. They have a tokenized dollar system that they use. PayPal is used in Palau, but the fees from PayPal go to PayPal and to their investors. If the Palau national government can get the same type of system in place, all those fees go to the national treasury, which can be used to pay for government services, infrastructure
For
improvement,
sure.
cybersecurity.
That's actually very smart. Yeah. And would be also great so that the government would have an independent actor as an to audit whatever the expenses are
Yes.
going. So
Yes.
the public will actually see where the funds are going, right?
Yes.
So that nobody can say and like, so I have like questions about the corruption or potential corruption, right? So that
Right.
helps to build trust between, citizens and politicians. And also
Most.
there's a cool initiative that I know that you're rolling out. I don't know which stage you are at, like registering the e-corporations, the C Corps, the
Yes.
LLCs.
So that is they've published the regulation. They being the Financial Institutions Commission for Palau. They're kind of like the what was it called, FDIC or SEC in the U.S. So Palau has their own version. It's called the FIC FIU. So they published the regulation, and now starting the end of this month, we have a technical assistance team from the IMF
Mhm.
that's going to come and show us how to actually implement it safely and securely. So it's there. We just have to get the training first. Again, it's something that's never been done before. There's other versions of it that have been done, like in the Bahamas, I believe, the British Virgin
Estonia.
Islands. Yeah, and so Estonia, it actually has a good model, but then you see how they start having to roll back because they got ahead of policy and regulation, so they have to roll back some of the things they were offering before, which so we're being very cautious because we don't want to offer a service and then take it back because it hurts the reputation of the program. So we're trying to be very careful to make sure that whatever we implement and offer, it's something that's enduring, and we're not doing a bait and switch or leaving our digital residents feeling like they were uh, deceived or scammed in some way.
So by the way, so Palau, like, you're you're equivalent to a SEC, right? FFCU you mentioned, right?
FIC, FIU.
FIU, right? So how do they basically determine digital assets, right? Let's say just Bitcoin or any alternative coins.
Right now they don't. That's another regulation that we're waiting
Right.
for them to write. And I think part of the training with the IMF is to help us flesh out, like, what that's going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the training we've received from different international partners is around understanding digital assets and understanding, um, you know, understanding the technology around it. And a lot of Palauans right now associate blockchain and Bitcoin with money laundering and financing terrorism. Like ransomware actors, they always ask for Bitcoin as payment. So crypto is a bad thing. They don't associate, it's called crypto because you're encrypting stuff to make it safer. It's the safest form of cybersecurity for data that you'll find out there. And then you decentralize it and you store it, and that gives it the integrity of the data and keeps it confidential. So there's not that's not in the discussion right now. So it's Palau's still very much paper check and get my cash and keep it at home, and then when I need it, I'll take $20 to the store and buy what I need. So
Now,
it's
if I just like go on a tangent really quickly, like it's just I
sure.
just think I would ask you this question. Following El Salvador, do you think there's a chance that Palau actually would accept Bitcoin as a legal tender?
So we had explored uh, some of that back in 2021, 2020, 2021. Before I joined the Ministry of Finance. Looking back and some of the things they had looked at, there was some exploration of that. Matter of fact, the first digital residency bill that was introduced had provisions for using cryptocurrency, at least accepting that as legal tender through programs like Binance Pay, where it's transparent to the vendor that this person paying for their diving or their hotel is paying with Bitcoin, because it's you get dollars. It's exchanged in Binance, and then you'll get dollars. All they're
Exactly.
doing is scanning your QR code that you have on the counter. But again, the money laundering concerns and countering financing of terrorism concerns came into play, and it was taken out of the bill. And then, so the Digital Residency Act that was actually passed is a version that does not have those provisions. And so part of that, though, was what led to the stablecoin research and pilot was, okay, we're going to take this and study it and then provide a report to government leadership, the president and the Congress, on our findings of cryptocurrency, so that you can read it and understand better, what it is. But that's been met with mixed results, mixed reviews. We'll see what it looks like going into the future. But there's a provision for banking services in the act that we're looking at. Again, a lot of that's going to depend on what the FIU, FIC determine is allowed. And they're taking a lot of their cues from, of course, the U.S. Treasury and the SEC, being that we don't have a central bank, we're using the U.S. dollar. So we are constrained to those regulations and what they're going to allow us to do.
Mm-hmm. How long does it take to even open the ID cards and that they will be shipped to you?
Well, depending on where you're at in the world and how long it takes you to get through the onboarding process, we're seeing, between 3 to 6 weeks. We
3 to
ship them with DHL, so it's the fastest way. The benefit of our process is you don't have to go to Palau like you do with Estonia. You can do everything online. We use SumSub as our AML KYC verification provider. They, oh, I had it written down here somewhere. They check your information against something like 260 some odd different databases globally. It's criminal databases. If you've ever been involved with money laundering or associated with terrorist organizations, if you ever worked in a bank or a financial institution that was found that went out of business because they were laundering money, or like the Enrons of the world, or the Silicon Valley banks of the world, they cannot be digital residents. They'll get flagged, and then they're so we're at probably 22,000 applications that we've approved since the start of the program. I want to say maybe we've had between 2,000 and 3,000 rejections that were caught during our screening, and so that's kind of the longest timeline is getting your photos uploaded, your government ID photo uploaded, and then all of those we use AI to make sure it all matches, and then goes into a final check. I have a senior immigration officer. That's her job, is to do the final check to make sure everything matches up, and they're not on any of the local Palau databases for either crime or money laundering, things of that nature.
Beautiful.
It's a very thorough check, but I think it's pretty quick, and cost effective.
I obviously I understand why you do it, but ironically, in my previous company, I also use Sub, so I know exactly how it works from inside as an admin. So yeah, we did the same verification. So I love that you do that, and it's seamless, it's automatic. So I any kind of other things that people should know about the program, like something like like I read that you also have the legal decentralized ID, which most of the people don't understand what it means and what it offers. Maybe just in few words to conclude.
Yeah, so a lot of organizations, and this is it's something that's being pushed by the World Bank, is this idea of a digital ID that only gives the requester the information they need. So instead of a normal driver's license where they'll have your driver's license number, your address, your age, first name, last name. If they only need to know how old I am so that I can buy alcohol at a store, buy cigarettes at a store, what we're looking at is, I scan my phone and it'll confirm through those systems that incorporate the digital ID that I am over 21 and I can buy, whatever. Or if I'm boarding a flight, the digital ID will tell them, yes, he has a ticket, he is who he says he is. My face will pop up in the screen that the agent looks at to make sure I am who I say I am. And then I'm allowed to go to the gate to board my flight. So like a lot of the exchanges, they don't need to know everything about you. They just need to know that you're, if you're a digital resident, you've gone through a AML KYC process already. That's very thorough. It's accepted by a sovereign government, and so they let you onto the exchange to do your business. Some exchanges, they want the utility bill that can be built into the digital ID through the utility provider. If they want your mailing address, then you can build that into the digital ID, and then you select what you want them to know.
But that's coming in the future, right? So that's not implemented yet.
So it's implemented into the digital resident program. It's built into the ID program. It just depends on the vendors what they want. And I mentioned the World Bank. So the World Bank is going to a purely digital construct. They don't want any more paper AML KYC verification. They want they're trying to do digital. They're moving to digital signatures, digital ID. Everything's digitized so that you're not killing a bunch of trees and creating a bunch of non-sustainable programs globally.
Perfect. So, I mean, again, thank you so much for such a like vast no explanation and such a profound like deep dive into this. There's one question which I want to conclude. I specifically don't notify people that I'm going to ask this question because I want you to answer like intuitively and in a spontaneous fashion.
Oh boy!
Oh
All
yeah.
right.
But so this is more personal question, which I think is important for every human being, and I want to hear your answer. Yes, you can drink. I hope there's alcohol. So yeah, here it goes, Jay. I want to know, what is the meaning of life to you?
The meaning of life.
Yes.
Holy smokes! So for me personally, as I've matured throughout the years, I believe it's just to be, not necessarily a good person, but to be a person and, stick to your values and stick to your beliefs. And it's different for everybody. And so it's part of that is respecting other people's beliefs and what they hold value and and hold dear in their lives, and just being a good member of the community. Not to say that I'm not a capitalist, and I like business. I like the aspects of making money. If there's things I can do to help the community in a worthwhile way, to me that adds meaning to my life. And it probably comes from, stems from my Palauan roots, where Palau is very much, it's a matriarchal society, and it's all about family, right? The women are valued because they can reproduce and give life, and that's how you sustain your culture and your population and your community. And so with that, I was always taught, like, you got to help those less fortunate. You got to help even those that are as fortunate. If they need something, their family, that's how you support the community. So I'm all about sharing, and I'm all about helping. And for me, that gives meaning to life for me, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. It's beautiful. To me, everything coming from the heart, that makes a lot of sense. So,
Right.
because because like when we talk about sense, it's like purely cerebral, like intellectual level, like like but but what I think, like when people talk about this topic, it's somewhere like in a like different realm. It's like a more like a subconscious, like
Oh yeah, yeah,
heart
yeah.
opening topic, which is like you talk about it like not from a just like, oh, like I'm just like a materialistic like creature and I live in this like world with five senses. This is what I know. Like you talk about like some deeper moral, ethical value systems, which that makes us humans, right?
Right.
So makes a lot of sense what you just said. Sharing and caring for others, that's what makes us human beings. Jay, I really appreciate. I think it was really interesting and for me, like very educational. I hope it will be for our audience. Where can people find you? Where can they reach out to you? They want to ask questions. Will you prefer LinkedIn or Twitter?
I'm on both LinkedIn and Twitter. I try to respond as quickly as possible. So if I don't, but I do respond, and I will respond to everybody that contacts me. It's just sometimes I take a glance. If your question was, a couple of paragraphs, okay, I got to come back and digest it to make sure I'm giving it its due attention. But small, short questions, I try to respond as quickly as possible. I know it helps the program. It helps people to stay informed. That's what those social media platforms are all about. I do enjoy a good meme every now and then, but I try to use it as more of an exchange of information medium. So yeah, LinkedIn, just look for, was it J-H Anson after the slash on LinkedIn.
If you just pro tip, if you just put Jay Hunter Anson, it'll be the first.
Okay, I've never looked for myself.
Yeah, so that makes your life easy. Thank you so much. It was really educational, and I wish Palau to get bigger in his digital residency program and more evolved as a nation, as a as a member, like as also a member of a bigger ecosystem, and I think what you're doing is really, really interesting. Like, I wish more countries will adopt those programs and make them happen. And I do believe that, like, sooner or later it's going to become a trend. So, like, I really appreciate that you're like starting this trend.
Yes, no, thank you very much. I really enjoyed my time and the discussion. I hope it was helpful.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.